In the autumn of 1888, the narrow streets of London's East End became the hunting ground for one of history's most infamous killers. A murderer whose identity has never been confirmed, a criminal whose name became legend, and a case that still fuels theories, books, and documentaries more than a century later. The world would come to know him as Jack the Ripper, but in his own time he was simply called the Whitechapel Murderer. A phantom stalking the poorest district in London and leaving behind scenes of violence so brutal that even seasoned police officers were shaken. Tonight we're diving deep into the Whitechapel murders, the victims, the crimes, the investigation, and the mystery that still refuses to die. Let's tear into it. To understand Jack the Ripper, you have to understand Whitechapel. By the late 1800s, the East End of London was overcrowded, filthy, and desperately poor. Thousands of Irish immigrants and Jewish refugees had fled famine and pogroms to settle there. Entire families were packed into single rooms. Disease spread easily. Violence was common. By 1888, Whitechapel had a population of roughly 80,000 people, many living in slums or common lodging houses. These weren't inns. These were places where, for a few pennies, people could sleep in a coffin bed or lean forward against a rope strung across a wall. Alcoholism was rampant, work was scarce, and survival often meant selling your body. Prostitution wasn't just common, it was necessary for many women to eat. This was the hunting ground of Jack the Ripper. Before the famous victims, there were earlier cases that raised alarms. In April 1888, Emma Elizabeth Smith was attacked in Osborne Street. She was beaten, sexually assaulted, and injured with a blunt object. She died the next day from infection. Before dying, she said multiple men attacked her. Most historians believe this crime was gang violence, not the Ripper. Then came Martha Tabram in August. She was stabbed 39 times on a staircase in George Yard. The sheer savagery made police suspicious, but her wounds were different from what would come later. No throat cutting, no abdominal mutilation. Still, something was changing in Whitechapel, and soon it would become undeniable. The murders most widely believed to be Jack the Ripper's work are known as the Canonical Five. Their names were Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. Between August and November of 1888, these women were murdered in horrifyingly similar ways. At 3:40 a.m., Nichols was found lying in Bucks Row. Her throat had been cut so deeply that her spine was visible. Her abdomen was slashed open. Her bowels protruded. She had been alive less than an hour earlier. Police realized immediately this was not a robbery. This was ritualistic, deliberate. Something terrible had arrived in Whitechapel. 1 week later, Annie Chapman was found behind a house on Hanbury Street. Her throat was cut. Her abdomen was opened completely, and her uterus had been removed. Skin and organs were arranged deliberately on her body. Witnesses reported seeing her speaking to a man earlier that morning, a man wearing a brown hat and dark coat. The killer was growing more confident and more violent. On September 30th, 2 women were murdered within 1 hour. Elizabeth Stride was found in Dutfield's yard. Her throat was cut, but there was no mutilation. Many believe the killer was interrupted. Less than an hour later, Catherine Eddowes was discovered in Mitre Square. Her face was slashed, her abdomen ripped open, her intestines placed over her shoulder. Her left kidney and uterus were removed. Her nose was partially severed. Cuts were carved into her cheeks. The brutality shocked even veteran officers. Nearby, police found part of her bloody apron and a cryptic chalk message mentioning Jews, something authorities quickly erased for fear of riots. The final canonical victim was Mary Jane Kelly. Unlike the others, she was murdered indoors, in her tiny room at Miller's Court. Her face was hacked beyond recognition. Her throat was cut to the spine. Her abdomen emptied of organs. Her heart was missing. Parts of her body were arranged around the bed. This was the most violent crime scene of the entire series. After Kelly, the murders stopped, and Jack the Ripper vanished. Police interviewed over 2,000 people. More than 300 suspects were investigated. 80 were detained. They searched butchers, surgeons, sailors, immigrants. They suspected slaughterhouse workers, doctors, even royalty. But forensic science barely existed. No fingerprints, no DNA, no crime scene control. Evidence was trampled by crowds. Newspapers published wild rumors daily, and hundreds of letters poured in claiming to be from the killer himself. The most famous was the "Dear Boss" letter. It introduced the name Jack the Ripper. Another, the "Saucy Jackie" postcard, mentioned the double event. But the most disturbing was the "From Hell" letter, sent with half of a human kidney. Some believed it belonged to Catherine Eddowes. Others believed it was a hoax. To this day, experts argue whether any letter truly came from the killer. Most likely, the letters were written by journalists or pranksters, but the name stuck and fear spread. Police profiles suggested a solitary man, likely local, possibly unemployed, possibly suffering from mental illness. Some believed he had surgical knowledge. Others said his cuts were too sloppy for that. Over 100 suspects have been named over the years. Among them, Aaron Kosminski, a barber, Montague Druitt, a lawyer, Walter Sickert, an artist. DNA tests have been attempted, but the evidence is contaminated and unreliable. No theory has ever been proven. Jack the Ripper became the first modern media serial killer. Cheap newspapers printed sensational stories daily. Over 1 million papers were sold per day. The nickname turned him into a monster, a character, a legend. Soon, Ripper became a template. Boston Strangler, Yorkshire Ripper, Beltway Sniper. The Ripper wasn't the first serial killer, but he was the first global one. The murders exposed the horrors of Victorian poverty. Public outrage forced London to clean up slums, rebuild housing, confront class inequality. But the mystery lived on. Jack the Ripper became a boogeyman, a villain, and a symbol of evil. He appears in novels, films, comics, games, and songs. More than 100 books have been written about him. Entire tours exist just to walk his murder route. In 2006, a poll named him the worst Briton in history, and still, we don't know his name. We don't know his face. We only know what he left behind. In the end, Jack the Ripper was never caught. No trial, no confession, no grave. Only victims and questions. Was he one man or several? A butcher or a madman? A myth or a monster? What's certain is this: for a few terrifying months in 1888, a shadow walked the streets of Whitechapel, and history has been chasing him ever since. Thanks for watching.